I am a ruthless collector. If a watch doesn't get worn for a few weeks, it finds itself on eBay and very quickly sent off to its new home. Sometimes though, the seller's remorse fully kicks in and within a couple of weeks, the regret takes over. Today, I'll take you through 10 watches that I deeply regret selling. Oh, and make sure you are subscribed so that you never miss a video. So the first watch I regret selling was actually the first ever watch that I sold as an enthusiast. When I began collecting watches a few years ago, the first YouTube channel I became addicted to was the Urban Gentry channel hosted by TGV. Now, he had a beautiful Breitling Navitimer, and I absolutely loved the design of it. So I searched for an affordable alternative and found the Rotary Hero chronograph. And fun fact, the review on this watch was actually my first ever video. Now, this watch wasn't the best quality. It was a fairly average quartz chronograph with a mineral crystal and low water resistance, but I just loved the look of it. The reason I sold this watch was because of the wearing experience. The supplied strap was so bad. I hated wearing it, and at the time, I didn't quite realise how much getting a comfortable, well-suited strap actually mattered, so I sold it. But if I had my time again, I'd have tried it on a few different straps. Now, this next watch is a bit of a weird one, because I didn't actually buy it for my personal collection. I only bought it to make a video on. My time with the Hamilton Khaki Navy was very short-lived, although when I did have it, I enjoyed every second of it. This was a 37mm dive-style quartz watch. On paper, nothing special whatsoever, but it just had that bit of magic to it. The smaller case size really meant that it suited my wrist and it was exceptionally comfortable, and the clasp was the best I've ever experienced. The whole watch just felt super premium. The bezel had great action, the sunburst dial was a pleasure to look at, and I loved the look of the aluminium bezel insert. But because I only bought the watch to feature in a video, I had already made a deal with myself that I wasn't keeping it, and when the time finally came to ship it off to a new home, I felt a little ache in my heart, because I knew deep down that this was a watch that I should have kept for longer. Now, I am sure that I am not the only one that has bought and sold this next watch. In fact, I'm sure that one of you watching has done the exact same thing. I had to pick up the Orient Bambino. At the time, these could be found for under £90, which was just ridiculous value for how good looking the watch actually is. My first mistake with this watch happened when I first bought it. For some idiotic reason, I decided to order the 42mm Bambino. At that point, I hadn't developed a preference in watch size yet, but my 6.5-inch wrist struggled to pull it off, and let's be honest, 42mm is way too big for a dress watch anyway, at least in a classical sense. So I found myself wearing it less and less, and when I finally came around to giving it a run out, I knocked it against a table and put a big scratch along the crystal, which was unfortunately the final nail in the coffin. I regret not buying a smaller Bambino model. I'm sure that I'd still own it to this day. This next watch was an absolute impulse buy. I had no plans of buying it, but when I saw it, I knew I had to have it. I was browsing eBay one day and stumbled across a weird listing simply titled Men's Watch. The main photo on the listing was blurry and you couldn't even see what brand the watch was. But after scrolling through the photos and squinting very hard, I noticed that it was a Christopher Ward watch with a stunning manual wind movement, visible through the sapphire caseback. Now, this watch was up for crazy cheap, so I was skeptical as to whether it was real or not, but I took the risk. I won the bid and the watch was delivered. Thankfully, the watch was real and in fantastic condition, and I wore it every day for almost 2 weeks. I grabbed myself a bargain and I was over the moon. A couple of months later, I got a message on Instagram from somebody asking to buy the watch. He said that he wanted to wear it on his wedding day. He was getting married, so although I wasn't really looking to sell it, it had a bigger purpose than being in my collection. So this next watch was my first ever Seiko, and since then I've owned around 5, but you never forget your first. This is the Seiko 5 SNKL 83, a watch that I originally picked up for around £70, back when the old school Seiko 5 range was only just discontinued. I really wanted to try out a Seiko 5 because every YouTuber on the planet claimed that they were the best thing since sliced bread, and well, it was a pretty good watch. It was nice and thin, had a 37mm case and some unique lugs. I sold this Seiko for a very strange reason. We all know how good Seiko's Lumibright loom is. It's amazingly bright. The problem that I had with this watch is that the loom, because it was so bright, threw off the colours of the dial. It just looked a bit strange, especially when out in the sun. I just thought that it looked a bit ugly. I have since come to appreciate strong loom on a watch, as it's a rare thing to find. This next watch was my first experience with a GMT, and what a first experience it was. Similar to the Hamilton Hamilton earlier. I bought this watch to feature in a video. However, again, I instantly fell in love with the beauty of it. The Gokota Sea Hunter GMT was my first experience with a watch from the British brand. I was extremely impressed with the quality and attention to detail on the watch. The brushed bezel was flawlessly executed and looked incredible, and the supplied strap on the watch was so good. I've been meaning to get in touch with them and ask them which strap it was, because I really need one for my current collection. It had a perfect 39mm case and 200 meters of water resistance, a proper little stunner. But like the Hamilton earlier, I had already resigned myself to keeping it, and I was definitely sad to see it go. I'd have certainly liked to spend some more time with this watch for sure, but I'll definitely be trying out a Gokota watch again in the future. This next watch was my first ever mechanical watch, but it had one big problem, so it had to go. The Vostok Amphibia. After watching countless YouTube videos on them, it was a way to dip my toe into mechanical watches without breaking the bank, because at the time, they were only around £50. I was truly amazed the first time I saw the second hand strolling around the dial. I actually really enjoyed the Amphibia. It was a bit chunky and definitely had its flaws, but it was just a charming little watch. However, there was one problem. The Vostok Amphibia doesn't feature a quick set date feature. Now, there's a little trick where you can change the date quickly by switching between 8 PM and 1 AM over and over, but this broke my movement. My watch was permanently stuck on the same date, which of course is just super annoying. I wanted to keep my first ever mechanical watch as just a place to look back to, but that broken date was just too annoying. This next watch still stings a little to this day, because this watch is now near impossible to get hold of. I scored an absolute bargain when I picked up the Loris Titanium Field. I managed to get it for around £25. Now, at the time, that was about right. However, shortly after picking up the watch, it got discontinued, and all of the stock dried up very quickly. Now, the Loris Titanium Field was an absolute no-brainer for those who loved great specs. It has a titanium case, 10 bar water resistance, and it was super duper thin. So why the hell did I sell it? Well, I picked up the Timex Expedition Mechanical, which had a sapphire crystal and a manual wind movement, and they were both almost identical in design, so I had to sell one. Yeah, I made the wrong choice. I sold the Loris and kept the Timex, but quickly realised that the charm of the Loris was irreplaceable, and just because the Timex has a sapphire crystal and a mechanical movement, it doesn't make it better. This next watch was the first time that I ever bought a watch from a micro brand, and it certainly did not disappoint. I was in the market for a sporty watch. I actually wanted to get a watch with some Mercedes hands, and a Submariner was quite far out of my budget, so after some searching, I found the Spinnaker Cahill midsize Admiral Blue. This was everything I was looking for: sporty, retro, and a lot of fun. I was highly impressed with the quality of the Cahill. It had started my interest in Spinnaker watches. The attention to detail was fantastic, and I enjoyed wearing it a lot. Again though, I found it sleeping inside the watch box more and more, often going for weeks without any action, and I had my eye on a bigger purchase. So unfortunately, it met the chopping block. Since this Spinnaker, I have taken a much deeper interest in micro brands, because this really set the standard of how good a watch can be by a smaller brand. Okay, this is the watch that I regret selling the most by far, and to be honest, it still hurts to this day. My Yema Rallygraph. I loved this watch, so why the hell did I sell it? Well, you know that big purchase I was planning? Well, I was looking at picking up an Omega Speedmaster, and I made a terrible mistake. I had set my mind that I was going to buy an Omega Speedmaster 3511.50, and it looks very similar to the Yema Rallygraph, so I thought to myself, I don't need both of them, do I? But the mistake I made was selling the Yema before I bought the Speedy, because after placing an order for the Speedmaster, it got cancelled and I got cold feet about the model, and ultimately decided not to get one, which left me without a Speedmaster, and my Rallygraph was gone too. Since I sold my Rallygraph, which was around 7 months ago now, I haven't bought another chronograph. It still stings a little and I'm not quite over it. Moral of the story, never sell a watch until you're absolutely sure of it. Learn from my mistakes. And if you want to make me regret selling more watches, why don't you check out toptierticker.com for some cool affordable pre-owned tickers. The link is in the description. If you liked this video and you want to see my current watch collection, be sure to watch my video here where I finally reveal my entire collection.